Welcome in, everybody, to the second edition of the Bundesliga show. We debated on a couple of names, and we're just going to keep it simple as to not confuse anyone any further, as we're all trying to understand this new league that is really, if you're a soccer fan, the only thing that you can watch that is a live football game. And joining me today, again, Nate Bukaty with a special guest, Mr. Andy Bukaty.
He suggests we call it Das Bundesliga show, or I don't know. I always forget the article before, words in German. Is it dar or das or da? I think it all depends, but we could call it one of those.
Well, that kind of brings me to somebody else joining us on the show, Carter Augustine. He was not with us last week, but he is with us in our week 2, and he is drinking out of Das Boot.
I wish.
What are you drinking there?
I've got a beer to go unnamed, but it's a nice vessel to get to my face. And yeah, glad to be on here. Thanks for the invite. Some tough shoes to fill after you guys had on last week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, Carter, you were injured last week, and you finally were available off the bench today. So we're happy to have you on the show. Last but not least, Conall McCourt. Conall, what are you drinking today?
I'm drinking some Heineken. Keep it pretty generic. I think it's what Holland Dutch this is. It's wrong league, but I mean, pretty good beer. It's pretty universal. So
I've got an oatmeal stout from Free State Brewery. What are you working on, Aly?
I am drinking. I did not get the beer memo, which I guess if we're talking about a German soccer league, I should have. I am drinking a Riesling from Chateau de Michel, and I don't really know much else other than that, other than it's a good Riesling and I'm enjoying it. So
here's something for you. I could be wrong about this, but I believe that the Riesling was invented in Germany. I believe it's a German wine off of one of the rivers there, the Rhine or whatever. I don't know, but it's I think that's right. Someone might correct me on that.
It sounds German.
Yeah.
It does sound German. Yeah, that's the first thing I thought of.
Well, in that case, guys, it was all by design. I knew exactly what I was
Cheers.
Cheers.
Prost.
Yeah, Prost.
Okay. So we're going to kick things off. We've got a lot of fun stuff to talk about as the Bundesliga continues. And the action started today in the Berlin Derby, or as Nate, you got a little autocorrect on your Twitter today with the Bertha Derby, not Bertha.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
We'll just start with that game, guys, because before we get into last weekend's games, just quickly recapping what happened there, looking to the matchups that are coming up this next week. We got a little taste of some soccer today, kicking the Memorial Day weekend off early with some soccer action. Like I said, the Berlin Derby, Hertha versus Union Berlin. And holy Jesus, is Hertha just going to come out and sweep the rest of this run for the Bundesliga? Conall, you were watching the game. What was your reaction to a really thrilling second half?
Yeah, it was a great second half. I mean, it was kind of the same as Hertha's game last week against Hoffenheim. It was 0-0 first half, and it was kind of cagey. It wasn't really much between the sides. But, I mean, Bruno Labbadia, the new coach, this is only his second game. Whatever he sent at halftime, it's working anyway, because, I mean, 10 minutes later after the half, it's been 3-0 up in both games. I think 2-0 today, actually, but they ended up 4-0 up. So whatever he sent at halftime is really working, because Hertha came out flying out of the blocks, and Union couldn't really control them, which was kind of disappointing, considering I thought they actually played pretty well last week against Bayern Munich, but they couldn't really handle it when Hertha put the foot down on the gas there.
Now, back-to-back shutouts, 7 goals across his 2 games, looking like Sporting Kansas City did at the start of their MLS season. Carter, did you get a chance to watch this one, and what did you think about that massacre that just happened?
Yeah, I did get to watch it, and I like watching Hertha. They have a Liverpool guy on loan, Grujic, who I think is going to be a pretty good player, so I like to tune in for him. They got another young guy, Mateus Cunha, who really was really good in that second half. Such a fun young Brazilian, and so it's fun to watch him. But the main reason I'm watching Hertha is the St. Louis legend Ibisevic. I mean, he's still doing it, and he was the man of the match, I think, in this game as well. Started off with a classic header, beat his defender to the near post and thumped it past the goalkeeper, and then like right off the kickoff, they steal it and he whips in a good pass in behind. And yeah, it's been wild how well they're playing since this restart of the Bundesliga.
I know it's crazy because I feel like, again, you can't really look at the form before the pause happened. And now it's just really a race for whichever teams can come out of this thing hot. Nate, how did that game kick off a packed weekend and upcoming week of games for you?
Well, by the way, if Carter's going to give a shout out to his Liverpool guys, Conall and I got to give a shout out to the Celtic man, Morata, who scored the fourth
Boyata.
goal. What's that? Boyata scored the fourth goal. I remember him at Celtic, but he's one of the top scoring defenders, I think, in the Bundesliga right now. But a couple of things that stood out to me in this one is it was another reminder of the oddity of playing these ghost games, because this would have been a raucous atmosphere, being the Berlin derby. And, I didn't know a whole lot about Union. I guess everybody here says Union Berlin, Union Berlin, whatever. They're obviously a team without much history. We talked about them a little bit last week, and this is such an opportunity for them to play in games like the game they played last week against Bayern Munich, and then this Berlin derby. They had one during the season in front of a crowd as well, but their away support would have had a chance to go see that game today, and they would have been absolutely flying. And I saw it was really a touching thing last week when they played against Bayern. They put pictures of deceased fans in the stands who never got the chance to watch their club play against Bayern Munich,
Awesome.
which really, to me, kind of drove home what we're missing out on, or what some of these fans, especially in Germany, where you have to give credit to the Bundesliga. They've done a great job of not losing sight of how important the fans are with the way they've conducted their ticket pricing systems and all of that. It's a big money league, but they haven't priced their fans out of the stadium. And so, it's kind of ironic that they're then the first league that's coming back and playing in empty stadiums. But Union was, they were a pretty good side coming into this break. We talked last week about their team's going to have to create their own momentum now. And maybe it was bad luck for them having to play against Bayern in that first week to give them negative momentum, because I thought, like Conall said, they started off better last week, and then now they've lost 2 in a row, and they've been outscored, 6-0 in their first 2 games back. That's going to be tough for them as a mid-table team.
Well, I want to stick with the stadium environment, because obviously one of the biggest things in the return to play right now is the fact that it's all happening behind closed doors. There are no fans in the stands, especially for a sport like soccer and in the Bundesliga, particularly, where the fans play such a huge role in oftentimes the outcome just with the home field advantage. So Conall, looking at the game that we saw today, the whole slate of games last week and weekend, what was your impression of watching international football with no fans in attendance?
You see, it's strange. It's obviously, as you said, like the fans add so much to it. I mean, I think we all even see it locally when we go to see Sporting. When Sporting Park is rocking, it really puts the fear into the other team, and it gives the home team a massive lift. So if those fans aren't going to be there, it's always going to impact on the player. I think it was kind of weird. Some of the players, you could hear every voice on the pitch. You could tell that they knew that people could hear them, and so maybe they weren't saying as much as they could. And I seen last week some coaches were actually using different hand gestures and stuff to change tactics, because obviously whatever they shout, the other team's going to hear it too. So like if they're given certain match instructions and stuff, that kind of stuff, it's just going to go part and parcel with having no fans here. And I think it's just something we kind of have to get used to. Having said that, without the fans and with the amount of time that everyone's had off, I've been pleasantly surprised by the standard of football. Like, I didn't expect to see the fitness levels. Some players just came out of the blocks like there was no break. I mean, we seen the way Dortmund and stuff started last week against, Carter, I know you were in a Schalke jersey there, but they just looked like they hadn't had a break. So it doesn't seem to be impacting them as much as I thought it would have.
Yeah, well, and it's crazy because we look at the home field advantage and we look at things like the fitness level and all of these factors that we thought could be a big deal, could play a role, and seeing the teams that are able to overcome it. Get this stat, you guys. Bundesliga home teams had 1 win in 9 games this last weekend. That is crazy. 3 draws, 5 losses. SPI and betting odds each projected about 4 to 5 home wins. That has not been the case at all. Carter, what advantage, if any, do home teams have in this run. Was that just a fluke for the first weekend, or can we see any sort of turn on that odd kind of stat there?
I mean, the one thing is they're playing in their stadium that they're familiar with and familiar with sight lines, maybe goalkeepers. That could be a big help for them. But overall, yeah, it's going to be a little bit of a loss, a diminish on the advantage that you get playing at home. We saw today, Hertha, they used that to their advantage a little bit. You wonder if playing in a historic stadium like that for Union Berlin was maybe without the fans was a little eerie. I don't know. You can't speak for the players, but overall, yeah, I think it's going to be a loss of an advantage. It's been eerie watching without the fans, and it's an opportunity for broadcasters to showcase the sport. And I was actually pretty impressed today with the guys on the call.
Yes.
On FS2. I learned a lot during the broadcast that I didn't know. And that's one of my favorite things about leagues all around the world is how the teams are intertwined with the culture and society. And he talked about the fact that these two teams had a friendship while the Berlin Wall was still up. And this would have been the first chance for Union to play at this stadium in this derby, such a historic stadium. And unfortunately, they didn't get to do that. But the other stat that he said that I think goes back to the fans is this was the biggest home win for Hertha since 2013.
Wow.
And the fans weren't there to see it. So, just a little bit of a bummer for the home Hertha fans who hadn't seen such a great victory in a long time.
And I know we talked, Nate Carter, about the broadcast and the challenges with maybe the perception for some people of how the broadcast is being handled. And Andy agrees because he's like, I don't know how I feel, but regardless of how people feel about how the broadcast booth is doing, the numbers speak for themselves. And last weekend, FS1 earned a .33 overnight rating for Dortmund's win over Schalke, which was a 725% gain over the last FS1 Bundesliga match that aired before the shutdown. Just some more stats with the TV ratings because I think this is really interesting stuff. Who knows if it'll carry over into this next week. Maybe it was just kind of the infancy stage and people getting kind of that excitement going with one sport being, back in action live. But more than 6 million people watched Sky Deutschland's Deutschland. I thought that was right, but I was like, I'm German, but I don't speak German. Their Bundesliga coverage on Saturday, which was the highest ever. And then got to give a shout out to the U.S. markets for viewership of a couple of games. The top 5 for Frankfurt versus Mönchengladbach, which is my team, on FS1. Kansas City came in at number 1, so people must have taken my advice in adopting that as their team, followed by Cincinnati, Washington, D.C., Tampa, and Portland. And then the top 5 U.S. markets for viewership of Dortmund and Schalke, Cincy, Philly, Washington, D.C., Kansas City, and Tampa. So, Kansas City is just right up there. If you need any more proof that KC is a soccer town, I don't know how much more we can give you because the numbers just seem to be there. Nate, I know you tweeted out about these numbers when they were posted. We've talked about this a lot with World Cup bids and all of these things. What does that say to you about Kansas City?
Well, clearly what it says is that the excitement generated by Das Bundesliga show that we did last Friday, really got the numbers up in Kansas City. So I think we deserve a nice pat on the back, don't you, Andy, for that? Hey, look, Kansas City responds to sports. This is a sports town. This is a town that's dying for sports right now, and it's a town with a good soccer culture. So you got enough people in town like us. Look, we're doing a Bundesliga show just for the fun of it. Basically, is what we're doing because we like sitting around talking. One of my favorite things about last week was, we recorded the show and then we sat around for another 45 minutes talking about soccer and arguing about it. And that's what we love to do. But I think, people hear that, they go, hey, I'll check that out. I'm looking into finding something to root for right now. And so I think it's great. I think it's awesome hearing those numbers. I agree with Carter. I thought that the announcers in today's match, the Berlin derby, were the best yet. And I wonder if they didn't kind of take some notes from last weekend. As a person who has a habit of talking too much, Conall once said that I could have a 30-minute conversation in an empty room. I'm constantly, as a commentator, trying to tell myself to shut up and not force too much information and commentary into the broadcast. I think these broadcasts right now, I'm interested what you guys think. I almost think you can't give too much commentary because of what you said, Carter. For one thing, we're trying to learn about this league. But another thing is there isn't that ambient crowd noise or any of the other stuff. And I thought when we went into it that maybe hearing the players yelling at each other would add something to it. I don't really feel like it does. It's not like when I watched the UFC, there were moments in some of those fights where they're right up against the cage and you can hear the guys talking to each other, or you can hear the corners giving some insight. And I'm not getting that from these games as much. I don't find it adding anything to the game. I'm to the point where I think I'd be in favor of them pumping crowd noise into the stadium a little bit. If we could hear the sounds of fans singing and chanting and stuff, I think it actually might add to it. It might add to something for the players themselves too, just to give some energy in the building. Because I thought, hey, these announcers, they had me more invested because I was learning more and I was more engaged in what was going on in the game by them describing more of it to me. So and I think it's instructive for us because we might be getting to that here in the United States before too long, hopefully.
It was interesting because sorry, Aly, just quickly, the color commentator was the sporting director for Fortuna Dusseldorf. So I'm curious if maybe some American leagues will take that direction. I thought he did pretty well.
Yeah, I didn't know that, Carter. That's interesting. And Nate, to kind of go back on that crowd noise thing, I know that there was kind of some back and forth and a pretty split divide between fans of the NFL when there was, some speculation that they might be looking to pump in crowd noise come fall if there aren't any fans in the stands. And I'm with you. Like when you watch those games and you can hear the players, but you can't hear them, right? You know that they're talking to one another, but you have no idea what they're saying. So that doesn't really add anything to the viewing experience. And the whole time you're watching, anything that you're hearing is, as a viewer, you want it to add to the viewing experience. And and that's why crowd noise, as a broadcaster, Nate, I love when you talk about calling a game and how sometimes you just let the moment live in the stadium with the fans and their reaction. You're not really getting much from players going back and forth and just hearing their echoing. I don't know. I kind of agree with you on that. So I don't know, Carter and Conall, what you guys think on that. But I thought the broadcast, same as you guys, thought they did a great job today.
One thing I would say is every sport is different. And Carter and I have called a lot of games in empty stadiums because we've done Swope Park Rangers games. And there's a few fans there, but it's pretty quiet. You can hear especially if it's a day game in the middle of the summer, there are not many people in the stands, and you can hear the players yelling at each other. You get to hear some foul language every once in a while and all that. Hey, those of us that watch U20 type World Cup games, a lot of those games are played in pretty empty stadiums. But my point with the games being different, you watch a baseball game, I don't think you need much crowd noise. The natural sounds of the crack of the bat and the pop of the mitt and things like that really tell the story more than anything. Football, I think, is interesting because when the home team has the ball, it's quiet. If you think about when you watch I'm in the middle of working, sis. I cannot hook those up for you right now. Can we do that later?
I know how. You
know how? Okay, then go ahead. Yep. Sorry. Water balloon fight's about to take place in the front yard in case you guys.
I'm jealous.
Yeah. Ophelia is about to instigate a water balloon fight if she can, in fact, fill those things up. She says she can do it on her own. So we'll see.
Hey, that's the other big event happening this weekend is the water balloon fight going on.
Yeah.
Can you live stream that?
Area that in the front yard. In football, if you really think about it, like if the Denver Broncos are at home, you used to be able to hear Peyton Manning yelling Omaha, Omaha like crazy because the crowd's dead silent. So I don't know how you handle that in football because it's much more based on what's happening in the game. Soccer, I think, is different because typically it's a constant thing. Obviously, the crowd rises a little bit when there's a big moment, but for the most part, through the course of the game, they're just singing songs at the top of their lungs, which sounds really cool, and it gives you energy. And I feel like you could actually just put that, and I don't know if any clubs have actually recorded the sound of their own stadiums over time. If you could go back in time and do that, think about if you could just record the audio at Children's Mercy Park for 45 minutes or even 10 minutes and put it on a loop of the fans singing, when the Wiz go marching in and all those things. I actually think it would add something to the stadium if you could pipe that noise in to each home stadium. I don't know if it's possible. I don't know. What do you guys think?
No,
Well, Manchester City, there's been a bit of controversy. They take a bit of a tar on their fans because everybody says they're plastic fans and whatever because of City came into all that money, and the next thing there was a million Man City supporters around. And there was a video actually on Twitter that showed them playing some of their fans, some of the crowd noise to an empty stadium. So it can be done. I mean, that at the time that was used to ridicule them by other fans, like saying that they play that every because they have no fans there. But so it can be done. I honestly would be interested in seeing it as well. I don't think there'd be too much of a problem with it. If anything, it would help the players, I think.
Yeah, Carter, what do you think? I know we've talked with a lot of Major League Soccer players. Granted, they, as we know, have not had their return to play happen yet, but are all anticipating that being behind closed doors. What's your thought on crowd noise, no crowd noise?
I'm up to trying it for sure. I'm curious, will they have like a DJ that's when the play's going, he switched to track 2 for excited crowd running down the right wing. You know what I mean? Like I'm curious how they'll go about it. Will it just be the continuous one?
Our guy Russell Gray. Let's get him in there.
I'll tell you one thing. I would not want to be the audio guy doing the crowd noise. That terrifies me being over that button. So if they do it, I'm going to give big props to the guys behind the scenes, guys and gals behind the scenes that are working that audio, because that is the scariest job in the biz for me.
I think my personal opinion, without having seen it done, I think you just play the crowd noise and let them, with the singing, and you don't worry too much about the reactions that would happen if a shot goes over the goal, and the crowd usually would go, ooh.
Whoa!
Yeah. I don't think you need to worry too much about that. Just something to give it a little, because I've noticed they played it. What made me think of it was before the Dortmund game last weekend, they were playing that kind of crowd noise during warmups. And I thought they were going to do it for the game. And I actually thought it sounded cool. And it made it sound more like a big time soccer game. And I would have been really against it going into it. I would have thought, that's forced and fake. But I've kind of changed my mind on it after watching look, I'll still watch the games and I still think they're fun. Don't get me wrong, but I actually think it maybe could add a little bit to the, especially if they did it in the stadium. So the players themselves could hear it and feel that noise a little bit, I mean, hey, I'll look at it this way, guys. When we do the games, a lot of the Sporting Kansas City games we do when they're away from home, we do from a studio here in Kansas City. And in our studio, we have 2 big speakers right in front of us that pump the crowd noise from Vancouver or wherever the team is. And it causes myself and Jacob Peterson to project our voices louder, to have a little more energy, because we have to talk over the crowd noise. And I'm glad that it's there. I think it makes us sound better as broadcasters. And I just wonder if it wouldn't have that same effect on the players a little bit. All of a sudden, when there's noise and there's atmosphere, I think it does something to give you a little extra energy.
I like that you bring that point up, because I thought it was really interesting hearing from Weston McKennie on Banter with Taylor Twellman talking about, and granted, Schalke had a pretty poor showing in their match against Dortmund. But that being said, he did bring up something that I think we were all kind of wondering, and that is, how hard is it going to be for players to self-motivate in a really strange and unusual setting? Do you think that it really would elevate it for some players? Granted, everyone's different, and maybe that's just Weston McKennie saying, we had a bad showing, here's why it was bad, and kind of trying to fluff it with some other things. But do you think it would have an impact? I know we've heard stuff from players, and it's hard to say just watching, but do you think it would elevate the play?
I mean, I also think I saw a McKinney interview where he said he's already used to playing it in front of empty stadiums because he's from FC Dallas. And I've seen a
sick burn, bro.
I've seen a few Houston Dynamo memes going around as well. So Houston does pretty well at home, and their attendance has been down over the years. I don't know. It'd be really interesting to me. I'm not sure if it would affect them one way or the other, to be honest.
Look, if you talk to guys, they will all tell you that they enjoy going on road trips. They would prefer to go to a place that's jam-packed in a hostile environment than go to an empty place like Houston, because it gives them more energy. At the same time, I got to be honest with you, I didn't like hearing that from Weston McKennie, because I'm going to question your competitiveness a little bit if you're going to allow that to affect how hard you go in a competition that matters, let alone a competition that doesn't matter. Carter, you and I get the benefit of going to Sporting Kansas City trainings a lot. And when they have their compete day, what day, I'm forgetting my days. Is that usually a Tuesday?
Yep.
Fights break out. I mean, these guys go after each other because they want to beat their own teammates, because they want to win. And I understand it. Maybe it gets raised to another level by having a crowd on top of that. But to me, you guys probably all watched The Last Dance. How much money would you have paid to go to that practice between the Dream Team when Barkley and Jordan and Magic were talking trash on each other? The people that were there that day say that might have been the greatest basketball game in the history of the planet. And there was nobody there. So to me, a competitor, shouldn't need to have that, in my opinion. And it's easy for me to say. I've never played in front of a big crowd in anything. But I just feel like you've seen enough of real competitors. When they get on the field or the court, whatever it is, they turn it up a notch. And this leads me to one other thought I've been thinking about, guys. It's been kind of clear that certain teams have been more prepared for the return than others. Clearly, Dortmund was much more prepared to return than Schalke was. I think that this bodes incredibly well for Sporting Kansas City if and when MLS comes back. They, to me, will be, without a doubt, one of the most, if not most, prepared teams in MLS. All you have to do is look at the fact that Peter Vermes is giving everyone the game plan on how to do it, and that they're the first team back doing everything. They're going to be organized, and it's going to be a matter of who can get their fitness up, who can return to form the quickest in these leagues. And I think you have to give a nod to Dortmund for that in week one, in my opinion, in week one.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that's something that's been really interesting to watch with these games. Okay, who's ready, who's not? Another big question, though, injuries. And we'll get to that in a second because I want to talk more about Gio Reyna and the fact that he missed out on his first Bundesliga start with a injury he sustained during warm-ups. But let's go through the results of last week real quick before we preview the upcoming games. Hertha 3-0 over Hoffenheim, Wolfsburg 2-1 over Augsburg, Dortmund 4-0 over Schalke, Dusseldorf and Paderborn tied 0-0, Leipzig and Freiburg 1-1, Mönchengladbach, my guys, 3-1, big win for the boys over Frankfurt.
Hey, Aly, we have to stop. We have to give Conall a little bit of because Leipzig's his team. And that was a poor performance. What answer for yourself, Conall?
They actually didn't play too bad, honestly. I didn't think so anyway. I mean, they get caught out a few times, and it kind of looked like they are one of the teams that it looked like this whole break has kind of affected them because they came back. They just didn't really look sharp when the game started. So it kind of got on top of them. Next thing, they went 1-0 down, and it sort of was a bit of an uphill battle from them. One of those things where nothing was going right for them. But they actually took off the American, Tyler Adams, for...
Why are they playing him at right back? That guy needs to be in the center of the park. I hated seeing that.
They're pretty stacked in the middle, man. They got some good center midfielders.
They are. They do. And the guy they brought on, Sabitzer, is one of their best players anyway. He was out hurt, and he came on, and then the next thing, I think it was about 5 or 6 minutes went by and they scored. So it was kind of disappointing to see them, but I think they'll be better this week. I think now that they've got the first 90 minutes under their belt, look, they're not a bad team. They have quality players all over the park. So I think it's just a matter of getting more minutes under their belt, getting more games under their belt, and seeing where they go from this week.
Hey,
who's the squad going to be?
Wait for Mönchengladbach, guys. Sorry.
Yeah, Mönchengladbach looked really good. Who's Carter's squad going to be?
I don't really have a squad in the Bundesliga. I have a few.
No, you can't do that.
I love Liverpool and I love the U.S. After that, I've watched the Bundesliga for a long time. It's such good soccer. I haven't been able to form a connection just yet.
Dude, if you're going to be on this show, you have to pick a side because we have to be able to tease each other and brag about the performances of our squads. That's how we're rolling here. She took Mönchengladbach.
Because honestly, only because I was struggling to pronounce it. I practiced like 18 times before we recorded, and then even still was like doubting myself as I was saying it. So it's like that'll be my team because I'll only get better at pronouncing it. And then they didn't let me down. So
Do you have a favorite player yet, Aly? You got to find a favorite player.
I know. I think I just ordered like a generic jersey because I wasn't ready to commit to anybody just yet. But like, I'm not above going and getting a name printed as soon as I find who I feel I want to represent on my back, and then eventually hang up here on my wall of jerseys and T-shirts. Okay, but the last 3 matches to recap, just with the scores: FC Cologne and Mainz 2-2 draw. Bayern and Union Berlin, Bayern won 2-0, and then Leverkusen and Werder Bremen a 4-1 beatdown on Josh Sargent's team. So those are the results. Conall, you got a chance to talk a little bit about your team, your side, Leipzig. What other matchup or what other game did you watch that kind of caught your eye, or any result that shocked you?
I like the Bayern game. Honestly, I thought that's why I was so kind of disappointed in Union Berlin today, because they were, for the majority of the game last week, they put it up to Bayern. They really played well. They defended well, and it was the manner of the way they gave away their goals. I think will be so disappointing for them. It was just a penalty, a clumsy penalty to give away, and then a header off a set piece off a corner. So after all that work going into it, keeping Bayern out, and then they concede 2 goals they got, but it kind of just showed how lethal Bayern can be. Especially, like, I remember Lewandowski just before he scored. I remember thinking to myself that he didn't really look that good. He didn't look that mobile. But then it only takes one chance and he put it away. And Bayern have players that got all over the park. I thought Union Berlin were unlucky, honestly. But then today it was a completely different story. Hertha just sort of battered them into the ground after the half-time whistle. But I think we're letting Carter away here without picking a team. So, bad choice of jersey today, but are you going to have to go with Schalke?
Man, you guys are putting me on the spot here. I'm just anti-Bayern Munich, really. Can that be a team? Like, I just want someone else besides them to win the league.
You got till the end of the show, man.
Yeah, or what, better yet, Carter, we'll let you just tweet out your decision so it's set in stone.
No, end of the show. You got
This is the worst form of peer pressure. This wasn't a stipulation.
But here's the thing. What was so fun? One of the things that was fun about last weekend was we were all talking trash on each other through the course of the day, texting each other, watching our games, and either bragging about our team, knocking our team, and that's the way this has got to go, Carter. So you got some time. The good thing is you're actually well educated on a lot of these teams. You're a man of taste. Andy agrees with me on this, and so you'll make a good decision. It's whatever it is, it's got to be counterculture. Carter's a counterculture kind of guy. I think he's kind of.
That's why I went for Leipzig, because that's the team everybody hates, and it's not the players' fault. They're just
that's corporate. You're the corporate champ here.
Okay, yeah.
I'll picked up a Red Bull and just proceeded.
Yeah.
yeah. Available in all stores in your local area.
And it's perfect that his team would have been anything but Bayern. That's counterculture right there. So you got to just, pick an upstart. Union Berlin would be a good team for you to root for, but
if it was a Berlin team, Hertha's Berlin's a very.
And Hertha's got a Liverpool guy. I think we've got your answer right there.
I'm not sure. There's so many teams. There's so many cool stories in the Bundesliga. It's a very difficult decision, and I wasn't aware this was a stipulation. It's hurting my heart.
Carter, I put that on myself. We were texting earlier. I could have easily told you. But Nate, I'm curious because your Premier League watch group of Arsenal fans, you said that you guys all agreed to cheer for Dortmund during this.
Yeah.
How was the group chat? Were things fired up last weekend?
It was weird, man, because we didn't have anything to complain about. Usually as Arsenal fans, it's just become a toxic bitch fest. When we text each other, usually it starts with us complaining together about something on the team we don't like, and then it devolves into us fighting over whose fault it really is that the team's so disappointing. And it always ends up devolving into me saying that, they never should have fired Wenger, basically. and everybody arguing with me. So this is different because they played, Dortmund's a fun team to watch anyway. And they played such a great game. I have to say, oh, buddy, he's mad at me for talking so long. So I have to say that coming up a week from Wednesday, right, or this coming Wednesday, Bayern Munich versus Dortmund. If there's going to be any chance of a real race in the run up to the end of the season, Dortmund's going to have to win that game. But I thought the way they looked, if that's any indication against Schalke, they can make this an actual competition. And like Carter, I know you've been big on this. You can't really put the Bundesliga at the top of those leagues in Germany if it's the same team every year, and 7 years in a row. So, Dortmund's really, it'd be great if they could push them. I think they could push them this year. We'll see.
They're getting close, just trailing Bayern by 4 points in the standings right now. So it is a tight race between the top 4 teams, and really the top 5. Only 8 points separate 1 and 5, Bayern and Leverkusen in that race right now. But we're going to wrap things up here on the show just by kind of running through the upcoming matchups for this weekend. There are some games this upcoming week as well. That's just a lot to go through. So we're just going to look at this weekend, and specifically, if you want to know what's coming up during the week, the one interesting thing is just that it's going to be a tight schedule. And we saw Gio Reyna get injured in warmups. We might see some fatigue become more of a problem as the games are getting closer and closer together and players are having a bit more demand. But as we saw, Hertha, guys, this is tough. Union Berlin, the Berlin derby today, and Hertha just walked away with it 4-0. Tomorrow, we've got a slate of games kicking off at 8:30 in the morning. Freiburg versus Werder Bremen, 8:30. Paderborn, Hoffenheim, 8:30. Wolfsburg, Dortmund, 8:30 a.m. And important thing to note here, after the Wolfsburg game, Dortmund, they're going to have to play, Nate, like you said, Bayern Munich and Paderborn. It's going to be a tough week for them coming up for your side. The last 8:30 game, my guys, Mönchengladbach versus Leverkusen. And then at 11:30 a.m. on Saturday, Bayern versus Frankfurt. And then on Sunday, 6:30 a.m., an early one if you want to wake up, Schalke versus Augsburg. And then at 8:30, Mainz and Leipzig. And then at 11, FC Cologne and Dusseldorf. So that is the weekend for you. A ton of soccer to enjoy on your Memorial Day weekend. Guys, before I let each of you go, game that you're most excited about, whether it's the team you're rooting for, Carter will let you take your time to decide, or a team or a matchup between, two teams that you're not rooting for. What are you looking forward to?
So first of all, is our Augsburg manager, does he get to coach this week after the toothpaste?
Yeah, he's back. He's back, yeah.
Good for him. Welcome back, buddy. How about that? Historic return, and you have to miss
His
it.
teeth are gleaming, and his skin is looking great. So
yeah, he better have some pearly whites.
Not stop smiling that whole time. I hope to see just like pearly whites every time the camera flashes to him, if he can behind the mask.
Yeah, he's gonna see your mask.
yeah.
Mönchengladbach, it's Mönchengladbach versus Leverkusen, right?
That's the game of the weekend,
That's
man.
the one,
That game is going to be a doozy. I mean, Leverkusen, if we're talking about teams, that's my team on FIFA 20. They're so fun to play with on that video game. That Kai Havertz kid is a player. And so that game tomorrow is going to be a good one.
I'm excited.
Yeah, I agree.
We're good.
Yeah, I agree with Carter. I mean, Mönchengladbach are a great side, honestly, and they're going to put it up to Leverkusen. But my God, Kai Havertz is he's incredible. I mean, I've seen this week he's been the talk all week. Apparently, Liverpool, Man City, apparently Barcelona are willing to swap 3 different players for him. So he's wanted around all around Europe, and you can see why. Even from last week, he's such an aerial threat. He can play in off the left. He can play attacking. Can play a bit deeper. He just seems to have it all. And him and Erling Haaland, they seem to be the crop of new players that are coming through that are hopefully be the new. I don't want to say Messi, Ronaldo, but I mean that tier of player looks like those two have all the potential. So I'd be really looking forward to see how Mönchengladbach deal with him, because Mönchengladbach have great players too, Thuram and stuff. They can hurt teams, so that'll be a feisty game.
Nate, what are you looking forward to?
Sorry, I had to unmute this. The little man's been wanting to weigh in like crazy. I agree, though, that the Mönchengladbach versus Leverkusen game is a really good one to watch. And obviously, I'm going to be tuned in. I'm going to be tuned into Dortmund. Wolfsburg's not a great side, but they're not a bad side. And I think it's going to be interesting to see what kind of squad rotation Dortmund decides to go with, because of what you said. They have to win pretty much every game. They have to look at every game like they have to win it if they want to catch up to Bayern. But they also know that they gotta keep something in the tank for that game on Wednesday. So I don't know what you guys have seen about Gio Reyna. I don't know if it doesn't look like it was too serious of a knock that he took. So could we see him this weekend? Could we see him on Wednesday? I'll be watching out for that as well.
Yeah, they're going to need him for sure, just given the schedule that they have ahead of them. From what I read, it looks like they don't seem too concerned with the injury, so I think that there's a good chance that he does make a return. And hopefully we see a better showing from some of our young American guys playing in the Bundesliga this next slate of games. But for Carter Augustine, Conall McCourt, Nate, and Andy Bukaty, thank you guys for joining us, and we will see you next week. Enjoy these games and have a fun, happy, safe, healthy Memorial Day weekend. We'll see you next week.
Bye, everybody.